Calling to order the regular meeting of the Wheeling Plan Commission for Thursday, June 27th, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Blanova.
I'm here.
Commissioner Creech.
Present.
Commissioner Kalis.
Here.
Commissioner Powers is here. Commissioner Yednick.
Here.
And Chairman Johnson.
Here. Mr. Robles, any changes to the agenda as of yet?
No changes.
Citizens' concerns and comments, we have none. We have somebody signed up for the one thing. So we'll move on to consent items. Docket number SCBA 19-21, 1900s Barber Parlor, 522 West Dundee Road, appearance approval of a wall sign. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Kalis, seconded by Commissioner Creech.
Commissioner Kalis.
Yes.
Commissioner Creech.
Yes.
Commissioner Blanova.
Yes.
Commissioner Powers votes yes. Commissioner Yednick.
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Items for review.
It does not appear that the petitioner for the next two items, PC 1914 and SCBA 1920, are present at the moment. So what I would suggest is that we move this down to allow the petitioner time to attend, if that's okay with the Plan Commission.
That's fine.
Yep.
So we'll move down to item 7C, docket number 2019-14, which was continued from June 13th, 2019 for a fence variance at 242 West Norman Lane. Variance to permit a 6-foot tall opaque fence within the front yard setback. Petitioner can come up. Come on up here. This is a public hearing, so I have to swear you in. Do you swear the testimony you're giving here to be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Is anyone else going to speak on your side?
No.
Okay.
Have the secretary open the public hearing.
Yes, you need to open.
Okay. Docket number 2019-14, Martin Check, property owner seeking a variation from Title 19 zoning. The Wheeling Municipal Code, Chapter 19-10, use regulations and associated sections to permit a 6-foot tall opaque fence within the front yard setback area, which restricts opaque fencing to a maximum height of 4 feet for the property located at 242 West Norman Lane. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, please explain what it is you're doing.
Okay, pretty much basically when we're looking at the drawing, that picture, that's exactly what I would like to have. The 6-foot fence, wooden fence, like it was submitted with my application. That's exactly what it is. And with that red area, okay, so it's not gonna affect the view at the front of the house, from the Norman Lane, West Norman Lane.
Okay.
Basically, why I want to do it, I'm a father of 2 kids, 3 and 4 years old, and my major consideration is safety. This house is pretty much in the public area, close to that Husky Park, and a lot of people, cars, walking by corner lot. That's why I was hoping that it would be possible for the safety to have that fence exactly like we can see on the attached picture, have it 6 foot tall.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, this is it. That was my major concern.
This is a public hearing, so if anyone else would like to talk about this, we do have Diane Mushanti. I hope I got that right. Come on up. And do you swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I don't really object to the fence itself. My main concern, and I was speaking with him before the meeting started, because there's a stop sign right in front of his house on West Norman. And I'm like 3 houses down from him, but on the opposite side of Fletcher Drive.
Okay.
And I've lived there for 61 years. And believe me, I can attest to the fact that Fletcher Drive is the main cut through, and we get people from all over God's green earth cutting through to avoid the light at Dundee and 83 or whatever their plan is. It's a very busy street, in addition to the people that live there coming and going to stores or taking kids to school and what have you. And my concern is that anybody coming, what direction, east, toward the east, on West Norman, when they get to that stop sign, are they going to have to pull out into the intersection to make sure there aren't any cars coming before they can pull out? To me, because I'm not good at visualizing these things in my head, more of a safety concern about the height of the fence and the fact that it will be going down the side of the house on the Fletcher side also. Like I say, he could build a 20-foot fence as far as I'm concerned. I don't object to the fence being built. It's just, like I say, with the traffic on Fletcher being what that it is. My husband, about 10 years ago, one morning, parked in front of the house next door to us from about 10 minutes to 7 a.m. in the morning till a little after 8, maybe 8:15, and counted cars and made slashes on a piece of paper. And in that hour, there was 174 cars that went through that intersection. And I've even mentioned it to a couple of different police chiefs about them, you know, parking halfway down the block or whatever and giving tickets or doing something. You know, it's just awful. They don't stop for the stop sign either. That's there on Anthony, at the end of Anthony, where it dead ends into Fletcher, which is basically in front of my house. And I see it all the time. They go around the corner on 2 wheels, and I just wanted to make it noted how busy Fletcher Drive is, because they come from all over. My daughter at one point was living over in Buffalo Grove off of Bernard, and I'd be leaving her house, and there'd be a car behind me at the red light. I'd turn right, and they were right behind me. They followed me. They finally stopped because I finally got to my house and pulled in the driveway, you know, and then he went on towards South Fletcher to get out on 83, all the way from that far north of where Garden Fresh Shopping Center, the old, what do they used to, Branch Mart, they used to call that strip mall there. And it's like, holy smokes, you know, they come from all over and cut through there because they can avoid the light at 83 and Dundee and so on and so forth. So that was my concern, was of the heavy traffic, and would that fence obstruct seeing traffic zooming, and they do zoom. You know, like I say, so many times, thousands of times, where they're going around that corner onto Anthony on 2 wheels. Tires are screeching, and of course it's usually the younger ones, but still it happens. So that's all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just a comment.
Anything you'd like to say in response to that?
Yes, actually, we talked already about it, and from my point of view, I totally understand your concern, But I still believe that the way how I was planning to run that furnace and what I'm allowed to do, the way how it was done before, I'm not going forward towards the West Norman. I move it back right to the edge of my house. And like she mentioned, that she cannot visualize that I was taking the bunch of the pictures from every point of view on the intersection, and that's not affecting anything. Even right now, without that fence, what I already removed, we have more open area. I took down like the huge pine tree, which was there for years, okay? And we have the pretty clear view from West Norman to Fletcher, going north and south, and West Norman all the way down both directions. And I don't think that's gonna affect the view. And I understand the concern because I also notice a lot of traffic in this area. That's why I want that fence for safety, like I mentioned before. And definitely, but I believe that's another issue, stop sign, four-way stop sign, that would be definitely a solution at this intersection.
Right now, the stop sign
But exactly.
is
So
only on
in
Norman?
my opinion, what I proposed on that sketch, it's not going to affect the view. I have another pictures. We can review it, and I just leaving it up to you.
Okay. We'll go to the commission. Commissioner Blanova.
Thank you. Would it make any, just a question, would it make any sense to close to the road, close to this stop sign, to make it 4 feet and the rest of the area to do 6? Would it make any difference?
Which area for the front?
The close to the road.
Actually, that's what I'm concerned about, because I'm afraid that somebody can just pull over and pick my kid. This is not for the privacy.
Got it.
This is not for the privacy. My kids are almost that tall right now. Somebody can easily grab them and they playing. That's their playground right there. But like I said, you can see it open. That area from the front of the house, which is not marked red, this is all open. And we having like, I don't know how many feet.
So the fence that's being proposed would be in line with the front of the home
In
here.
line with the house. right.
And would go, the intersection is up here, so there would not be any obstruction with the vision triangle. So it would be, especially since the fence, there was an existing fence up here, as Mr. Scheck had mentioned, that he removed. That was at 4 feet, and now what's here right now, currently in these photos, is a 4-foot tall chain link fence, which is in the same spot that he wants to put the 6-foot tall wood fence that would not extend beyond the front of the house and not get any closer to the intersection. So it's actually far enough away to, from staff's opinion, not cause any issues with the intersection.
I also removed like the huge pine tree right on the corner of the intersection that was obstructing the view. Now we have the nice clearance with the...
Got it. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Creech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Robles, the sight lines for a fence on a corner, isn't it like just 20 feet from the street, from both streets?
It's 20 feet from the intersecting lines of the curb. And so the house itself is 29 feet from the property line, and there's an additional...
So he's got like 40 feet in both directions.
Correct.
So he's well within the parameters of...
Yes.
Okay. I have nothing more. I'm fine with.
Okay. Commissioner Powers.
Thanks. So Steve, related to the same thing, there was a condition, you had this vision clearance requirement. So is that the part of the code, is that what you just explained to us?
There's two scenarios for the vision triangle. There's intersections and then there's driveways for these scenarios where there may be a fence installed adjacent to a neighbor's driveway, which is this scenario here. As you can see in this photo here, there's the neighbor's driveway to the south. I guess it'd be southwest of the property. And so there's a vision triangle requirement for driveways as well, so that if a taller fence does get installed, it doesn't prevent the visibility of the neighbor being able to back out of their driveway and not have visibility of the sidewalk or cars coming down the street. So the vision triangle for driveways is actually a little different, where it's measured from the center line of the driveway, 20 feet, and then from that point, 20 feet the other direction to create that triangle. So there may or may not be a conflict here. So when Mr. Check comes in for the fence permit, he'll just need to show that it meets that criteria, and we can help him with that, you know, if he needs.
So in some part of that fence, he may have to shorten it to allow that viewing?
It may not have to be shortened, but it may have to be kind of chamfered or angled.
Okay.
To just not be within that triangle.
Okay.
There may be a little piece that has to be angled. We don't know what that is. We'll need to have a little bit more detail
All right.
to determine that.
I really have nothing else. Thank you.
Commissioner Yednick.
Yeah, I appreciate your neighbor's concern about the intersection, but I don't see that as being an issue. I had a concern about the driveway. I was thinking if you could bring back the picture with the van or right there. Yeah, I think that would create a blind corner if a kid's on a bicycle come in and a car's pulling out, nobody's gonna see. So I would like to make it a condition. When I was looking at this, I had two thoughts. One is either that the fence steps down to the corner to 4 feet, or the other one I was thinking, I think you just mentioned, Steve, was you cut off that corner and maybe you could put like a decorative bush there or something, a small bush. So it would look nice, but you'd give up a small triangle of your backyard there. But I really would like to make sure that car, you know, especially if they're coming from the garage all the way in the back and they don't slow down.
Right.
Somebody's going to step out in front of that. So you know, if you're willing to do that, then I don't have any objections. And the other question, I was curious, if you go to one other picture where it's, so the fence the wood fence that's showing, so we're basically saying that would be like an extension of that fence.
I believe
Almost.
that is taller than the 6 feet. That's taller than the 6 feet.
No, go back
By the
beyond
driveway.
that. Yeah, right there, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would be almost extending that fence all the way around the whole thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, then I definitely would want to cut that corner off or
Yeah,
something.
and that is a code requirement to have not only block the vision triangle of the intersection, but of the driveways as well. So we'll work with Martin to make sure that is met. So
If you're willing to do that.
Sure.
No other questions.
That's not
Okay. Mr. Kalis?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to confirm that Commissioner Yadnick just suggested that he cut off that corner, but per code and per the permitting, that will determine if that's necessary, right? I mean, we can't assume there's a problem, but if they go to measure and there is a problem, then we could talk about cutting off that corner. Is that how the process works?
Yes, so during the permit review,
Yeah.
not only would we review the construction of the fence, make sure it meets the requirements, but also the location as well,
Okay.
that it follows with the ordinance, but also the code requirement on that vision triangle.
Okay.
So that's where we would determine at that point where the vision triangle, if there's an obstruction, where that is, and work with the owner to angle that fence so that it's just out of that view triangle.
Okay, so then we wouldn't need a condition necessarily, because it would.
It's essentially kind of reinforcing the code. It's
Yeah.
more to inform the petitioner that there's that requirement, and they'll have to meet that requirement for the permit.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that staff had included a draft condition in the staff memo regarding this, about making sure that there's adequate vision triangle line of
Okay.
sight.
I'm sensitive to this. I actually hit someone on a bike with my bike on a corner that was blind. So I know the potential problem, especially with a car coming out. I hit another bicycle, but if a car's coming out and you can't see a kid coming on a bike that, you wouldn't want that for your kids. It could be your kid,
I totally understand.
So, as long as the code and the permitting all will address that and make sure it's all kosher, then I'm good with that. And just to confirm, you are doing, assuming it's all approved, the board-on-board fencing, 6 foot, like it shows in this picture? Okay. Are you going to match the color of the existing fence in that little piece we see in the back there?
Yes, pretty much when you look at the picture with that gazebo, that's pretty much going to be it. I'm going to wait a little bit till the wood gets ready to be painted. Probably maybe next year something matching colors to the house. So it all.
So you do intend to match the
Nice
colors and, okay,
match.
because that would be very much nicer looking. Great, let's, as long as the permitting will figure out if there's an issue or not, then I'm good. No further questions, thanks.
Okay, thank you. That wood fence that we see in the background there, is that your fence or is that the
No,
neighbor's?
that's, I don't really know.
It's a neighbor's.
I don't know.
It's a neighbor's, yeah.
But that fence, I have to replace that fence because if the wind start blowing stronger, it's all gonna just fall out. So I'm not sure whose fence it is, but I'm willing to replace it, no matter what.
And you're hoping to tie this new fence in right in line with
All
that?
the way, right?
Okay. I had nothing further.
To match the fence.
So,
Well, it may not be. Oh. Yeah, yes.
if you just want to read that condition into the
Yes.
record.
So the condition was saying that prior to the issuance of a fence permit, the fence must demonstrate compliance with the vision clearance requirements of section 191130 of the Wheeling Code, and that section 191130 is the actual citation of how the vision triangle is established.
Okay, thank you.
Are we safe to assume that it's going to be the driveway and, because we have the driveway and the corner, should that
It's-
condition be
I don't
specific?
think the corners
Does it matter?
at all.
Okay.
Corners,
That's-
it's well.
That's 40 feet, okay. All right.
Yeah, it would be the driveway
Okay.
issue. I have a similar situation at my house. I have a corner lot too, and had to go through some of this for my fence. I can relate. Okay, so with that condition, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Powers, seconded by Commissioner Kalis. Roll call.
Commissioner Powers votes yes. Commissioner Kalis?
Yes.
Commissioner Blanova?
Yes,
Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Commissioner Yadnik?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson.
Yes. We'll have something for you to sign.
Yeah, I had the other one, I was like, I think I added that in there.
And we need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Come on up. And there's 2 copies, you keep one, and we get the other one back. Right down here. Yeah.
Yep, right there in that box.
Keep one.
I'll follow up with you about the next steps in the next meeting date. Okay? Yeah, sure, no problem. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
For tonight,
Yeah.
yeah, tonight you're free to go, and then I'll follow up with you tomorrow about the next meeting date.
Thank you.
I think we have Bucky's here, so.
Do we have representatives from Bucky's here now? Okay. So we'll jump back to 7A, docket number PC 19-14, Bucky's Mobile Mart, 1515 East Lake Cook Road, minor appearance approval of building exterior enhancements, and docket number SCBA 19-20, Bucky's Mobile Mart, 1515 East Lake Cook Road, for appearance approval of wall signs. Steve, anything on this?
Yes, so obviously, the request is for a facade update to Bucky's Mobile based on corporate rebranding. And I'll let the petitioner go through the specific details on that. Staff did have some initial concerns regarding the proposed aluminum panels of the renovation or the facade redo. However, we had visited a recently completed Bucky's in Highland Park that received a similar facade treatment. This is the particular Highland Park Bucky's. Slightly different because it was new construction rather than a renovation, but the aluminum panels and the color scheme is the same. Staff went out there and took a look at it, and here's a close-up view of it and the painting. It will be painted on site, the different color variations, and that's where staff was concerned regarding the field painting.
Also, these aren't manufactured in the different colors?
No, our understanding is that they would be painted in the various coloring, and this is a close-up of that to see. And in our inspection or field visit to Highland Park and looking at these panels, they have weathered pretty well. Again, it's a newer construction, but it has been there for I want to say a year.
Highland Park, I think it's been maybe almost 2 years.
Okay, 2 years. So it has seen some winters and some summers. We didn't notice any fading or any chipping or any peeling or anything like that. So we as staff have confidence that the same application used here will provide some durability in that regard. And then lastly, signs are typically put on the consent agenda. While all the signage that's being proposed here is compliant, the reason why it's on the normal agenda is because the number of signage for this main facade it's basically split up into 3 signs, whereas the sign code requires 1 sign. But in this case, staff feels that this is appropriate because the combination of sign area for these 3 signs is well under what the maximum of a single sign would be. So rather than having one really large sign, which they would be able to do, we felt that this was actually better and in better scale and character with this particular building, that it's divided up into 3 signs at a much smaller sign area. So that's it from staff's perspective and available for any questions. Otherwise, we can turn it over to the petitioner.
Okay.
Well, Steve basically covered it. You guys are familiar
What he said.
Yeah, whatever he said. It sounded really good. I don't think I can top that. But you're familiar with the building. It's seen some age and it needs a facelift. And Bucky's nationwide are going through a new look for their stores. And the one in Highland Park is one of that's the model. There's another one in Vernon Hills that's similar to that as well. So the application here with these aluminum panels is really just skinning the existing building. We're not adding to the footprint. We're not changing anything other than just dressing up the exterior of the C-store itself and the car wash that's behind it as well, with a similar treatment. And you have the drawings for all that in your package to see what we're doing. But it's really simple application. And what's not, we don't see the metal panels, it'll be just, cleaning up the wood siding that's on the building, repainting that, giving it all just a refresh across the board. So pretty straightforward and simple.
Okay. Let's go to the commission. Commissioner Kalis this time.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks for presenting. I'm glad to see a company wanting to refresh. That's always good with facade, so thank you for that. Is there anything that you're going to be doing with the gutters or mechanical on the roof or roof tiles themselves, or are you literally just putting panels right in front?
Well, on the front, if you notice on the drawings, that the front where the panels exceed above the gutters, we're actually going to build a little cricket to divert off to the side where the gutters are. The gutters will be painted and replaced as needed, depending on that is, and the roof screening, that whole back fencing on the roof screening is going to be repaired and replaced.
Okay. And then, did you look at, were there alternative options besides the aluminum? Because we usually don't like painting materials, but as,
The other option would be what you see similar to a lot of the new branding looks at a lot of the quick-serve restaurants as Nichi-Ha panels. It's a cementous siding that goes up there, which
Okay.
would have a similar look, but it would still be a painted finish.
right, true. That was all the questions I had.
Very good.
Commissioner Yednick.
Thank you. Personally, I like the blue color scheme better, but I guess I'm not an industrial designer, and what do I know? But the other concern I had was, if you look at the Highland Park pictures, do we have to be concerned about the bad water stain that is running down the front of that picture?
That was staff's concern as well. That's actually a brick or a cement block. That's actually not the aluminum panels. So this is a cement block that was used specifically for Highland Park that is a porous material. So the tower, as I call it, the tower feature here is actually a different material that's used in Highland Park than what would be used here, which would be the aluminum panels. So we shouldn't see.
Okay, so the tower is going to be aluminum panels here
As
in
well.
Wheeling also,
Right.
as well as
And then the tower here, at the tower in Highland Park is a cement block.
Okay.
So that's why it's absorbing the water and showing water stains.
Yeah, it's just weird that it's in that one section. It's like they didn't create the water flow well
Yeah,
or
there's
something.
some seam or something, yeah.
That was it, like I said, I like the blue better, but I don't know, what do I know? That's all, thanks.
Commissioner Creech.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Blanova.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Powers.
I have nothing either.
Okay. Someone mentioned the screening on the roof and the pictures we have. It looks like it got some damage.
Yeah, it's in very bad shape, but
Yeah.
the instruction to the contractors who have been in the project is to make new,
Okay.
repair and make new.
That's just going to be replacing what you have with the white
Yes,
fence?
yes.
Okay.
Same thing with the wood siding around the building itself. There's some areas that are pretty chewed up and
I guess I was under the impression that these copper tone panels were manufactured with that color, but
Man,
So
I'll be honest with you, the manufacturer that Bucky's corporate in Omaha selected, I was surprised they weren't pre-finished, but they've used these in other stores and other locations, and it's something that they've found success with.
and they paint them on site
They do.
before they put them up or after they put them up?
I believe, after it's installed, after the system's installed, they paint them.
What color does it start out as?
I think it's a gray primed color.
Okay.
I think, I'm just,
Okay. Any questions on the signage? We didn't, nobody talked about that? Any problems? Issues? Okay. Then, Mr. Robles, is there any conditions on this?
There are no conditions on these.
Either one?
Correct.
All right, then do I hear a motion for docket number PC 19-14, the minor appearance approval of the building exterior?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Powers, seconded by Commissioner Creech. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Powers votes yes. Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Commissioner Blanova?
Yes,
Commissioner Kalis?
Yes.
Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
And Chairman Rafato? Chairman Johnson, I'm sorry.
He's probably watching.
Yes. And then on docket number SCBA 19-20, Bucky's Mobile Mart for appearance approval of wall signs.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Yednick, seconded by Commissioner Creech. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Commissioner Blanova?
yes,
Commissioner Kalis?
Yes.
Commissioner Powers votes yes, and Chairman Johnson?
Yes. We'll have a couple things for you to sign.
very good.
Going away, President. It's raining.
When do you expect to start all this?
Yeah, the permits are in right now. Get those signed for you.
two of each here.
Right. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get one of these. Make sure I'm giving you two different ones there. Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
All right. Docket number 2019-18, continued from June 13th, 2019. Village of Wheeling amendment to the comprehensive plan for the station area plan.
I need one for that, right?
Yep. Do we need to take 5, or are you all set? I think we're set.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Tim Kirkby. I'm with Farr Associates Planners and Architects.
Hi, good evening. Kelly Connolly with Sam Schwartz Engineering. We helped with traffic and transportation.
It's great to be back here. After our 3 days charrette months and months ago in November, I told Steve after we left, I love that place. Like, that was way better to come to work those 3 days than going downtown. So we really are happy to be back. We're excited to get back into this project. I know that Andrew reintroduced the project 2 weeks ago. I watched the video, so I'm going to try to avoid, retreading the stuff that he already went over and instead just cut right to the chase for everybody here.
Thank you.
And so, in that document, in the draft that we put out there was a page that said 4 key recommendations. And it occurs to me now, and I think that this was, what I'm gathering from everybody's feedback was that those were some pretty high-level recommendations. What are we recommending in terms of things that we can do right now, and where should we put our priorities? So I'm going to reframe the recommendations a little bit now and say this, that we would say that the first thing that the village ought to do is adopt this plan. We understand that there are even some actual, property owners and developers that are even kind of waiting to see how this shakes out before they make a move. And so part of the project initially, part of the goal of it was to give some clarity of what the village and the commission wanted to see from these places, so that when they did come in with a site plan review, it was a little bit more streamlined, a little less frustrating for everyone. So the sooner that this plan can be adopted, we think that'll be a good thing. And that first recommendation that we make in there is still probably the next recommendation, I would say, is that what goes hand in hand with this, with a sort of a conceptual site plan, would be a form-based code, which would actually regulate that, because we have, with these 3D renderings of the massing, and we have the plan, but it's not enough to really guide what would go there. So instead there would be for each sort of situation, or we could do it by sub area or by street, not we, but whoever the consultant would be, that it would show build to lines, setbacks, things like that, height restrictions, and a more refined massing that would, as Andrew talked about, the benefits of a form-based code is that it makes everything a bit more predictable. Like when you're playing by the rules of conventional zoning, you don't really know what you're going to get, very much at all. Whereas with a form-based code, there's the chance for architects to still be creative in all of that, but at least what the streetscape is basically going to be. So that's a good thing for all property owners, because they feel like, well, if I make this kind of investment, the next guy's going to do it, the next woman's going to do it, and that the sum will be greater than the parts and all that. So the first two would be adopt the plan. Try to get the form-based code going. I talked to Steve about this today to see, like, well, how can we expedite this thing? Because what I would hate to think is that some of these folks that have been waiting for a while, and they think that now we have something to go with. Well, now I got to wait again for this next process. But it probably doesn't have to take that long to do the form-based code, especially if you just focus on some of the key parcels, or probably the whole station area would make sense. And then once the plan is adopted, the next thing to do is to market the plan. Take it out there, show it to developers, and try to gin up interest. But not necessarily, and this is advice coming from our market analyst, Bridget Lane, that don't be so quick to issue an RFP for some of the properties and things like that, because you may want to see how the town center goes. And because we all assume it's going to be very successful. And if it does, that's going to mean that you're going to get better quality responses to your RFP when it goes out. So give that a little time, you know, to get the value. And the other thing is that one of the things that the 2004 plan recommended was to entitle about 900, I think it was exactly 900 new units of housing. And that's actually what's happened. It's already been entitled. So we don't really know whether the market's going to be saturated or not. So it'll be interesting to see how that works, because it may be that it doesn't make sense to have yet another very big multifamily building go up. So maybe a moment just to see how that turns out. But it seems like so far so good. Everything, you know, it's the talk of the town for the area for sure. And then there are some things that the village can do right away because they own the properties. There's in this block just right across the street here, the village owns a property right in the middle. You guys are probably aware that it's kind of like, it's a smart thing because you're holding on to sort of a leverage position to hopefully get a better outcome if there was some kind of unified development. So that's a very smart thing, and we'll show how that may play itself out here in a minute. And then also there's that building just on the west side of the tracks that the village owns that is holding on to see what happens. But those are things that without having to buy more properties or somehow finagle owners into assembling their land, those are assets that you can use right away. And then I would say the last thing is just don't do things that aren't consistent with a long-term vision. You don't have to do something right away necessarily, but don't do things that are going to get, that you'd have to like literally like rip out later. You know, like if I could go back in time and have the village maybe build their library here, that would be great. Like libraries are a great thing for TODs, like 1,000 people on average come doing it. So things like that, just to basically, next time that there's a big decision to be made, whether it's repaving a parking lot or repaving a road, just make sure that it's consistent with the long-term vision, that sort of thing. So without any further ado, I'll just get into this, and I'm going to skip a few, and I just want to go straight to the survey results, because I think there's one that's most important, because I wasn't so sure about this, to be honest with you. And we asked, is this whole notion of making a walkable town center, is that even what the village wants? And the good news is, I think it's good news, since this is what we've been trying to do, is that, granted, there's only 14 replies, but very supportive of that idea, okay? So, but the next thing that we have to recognize is, it's kind of a challenge. This site, I mean, maybe it goes without saying, but I'll just like state the obvious, is that what we're trying to do here is turn, because the station area is split between the north side and the south side of Dundee, and it kind of carves out the town center, which is already its own thing. And so the suggestion is that we're trying to make a transit-oriented development that's divided by a street with a lot of traffic on it. Can we do that? It's tough. There's a lot of lanes there, and it needs a lot of lanes because you have to have dedicated turn lanes all over the place, or else we know the traffic's going to back up. So you have to widen it out to get the flow through. So are we totally screwed? I don't think so. And so I'm going to skip real quick here, and in a minute, Kelly's going to probably correct half the things that I say because she's the real expert at this stuff. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I think about this a lot. And since the last time I was here,
Talk fast.
Tim, I can get it.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's look at that PDF. Thanks, Steve. Since the last time I was here, I kept thinking about it and trying to find examples of places that were analogous to this, because typically, and I'll just show this one first. This is the town I live in, Park Ridge. And Park Ridge has a nice TOD. It has a street with, 2 or 3 story buildings and the coffee shops and all that. You can cross the street. It has a train station. And it also has an IDOT road with a lot of traffic on it, actually more traffic than Dundee. Now, typically, these TODs, you'll see that there's this high traffic road, the thing that's shown red here.
What's TOD?
Oh, transit-oriented development.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. And typically, you'll have that high-volume road because you want that to bring in customers and people that are going to get out of their cars and walk. So you don't want it to be so far out in the boonies and stuff that you don't have that. But typically, the street that is what we think of like a traditional main street is perpendicular to that. It's not that street necessarily, and that the train station is just a bit off of that high traffic street, closer, kind of nestled into that main street, and that's kind of what Park Ridge has, except that Toohey Avenue here, I was surprised to see this. It's got a lot more cars on it than even Dundee does, And it cuts right through the downtown, and it works. So, and here's Wheeling. Now, the blue line here isn't quite what you have typically because this isn't a real street when it cuts through the town center. It doesn't continue off to anything, does it? It just kind of loops back around. And so the challenge here is we're trying to make the high volume street and the main street one and the same. Dundee is going to try to be that thing. And so here's a great example, and actually I'm going to get to the great example. Now this happens pretty often too, is that the train station is quite far from that high traffic street. Here is Downers Grove, it's quite far. You wouldn't walk that far, but that's okay because these are for cars. But here, turns out, I didn't know this, Kelly lives in LaGrange, so this is where she's really going to correct me. And well, maybe I'm onto something here, guys, because the blue line here has just the exact same number of cars on it as Dundee does, and yet off to the north, off to the south, it looks a lot like Dundee. It's wide, there's many lanes and everything like that, and the buildings are set back from it in a typical suburban kind of development pattern. But when you get close to the train station here, it becomes that kind of main street. And I think that the main thing that the challenge that we're up against here, and we'll get to the idea of the crossings, because I know that's a real hot item and something that everybody's interested in, but we recognize their challenges, is that what you need to have for these kind of main street sort of situations, these commercial districts to work, is to be able to cross the street and hopefully even to kind of see what's on the other side of the street. So if you had a shopping center that's set way back behind a sea of parking on this side and this side, and you can't see what's over there, you have to get in your car and go back and forth and all of that. But if it's closer, you could conceivably, I'm over here, I'm going to walk over there, go back and forth, that sort of thing. And our office has done studies before where we kind of even figure out exactly the metrics of how that works. And like just to point out here, there's not very many crosswalks. The crosswalks are spaced at least 1,000 feet apart. That's like an aircraft carrier. So if you can imagine, like, am I really going to walk all the way down to that next one? And that's why the two crossings that we recommend here are kind of strategically in between the two. The one to the west here, we show it being on the hump of the train tracks for a couple of reasons. One is that when we met with the fire chief, he pointed out that that's sort of a hill. If you were to have a pedestrian crossing just beyond that and somebody's in the middle of it, a car might not even see him and it's too late for them to slow down. So to put it on the high point is a good thing for safety. And it also is a place that, when we get to the enlarged site plan of the Lynn Plaza area there, and we're talking about making a connection from that, it would be nice for folks to be able to cross and get down towards the train station and towards the town center further east than being all the way down at that next actual signalized intersection. So I'm just going to skip this again. These are just zoomed in views of the examples that I already showed, and here we are. I probably should have had this on the screen at the time. So we're talking about here, because from here to the next one down is 1,000 feet, and it's even further to the east, and that's a place where we show a crossing as well. And one of the things that will be important about these, I think, is if you've ever tried to cross a road like this, I do it every day trying to get home, is that it's that game of like Frogger, if you remember from the old days. You can get halfway across, but you can't get all the way across unless you're really fast. But if there's a place halfway across to stop and be safe, it makes all the difference in the world. Otherwise, you might be standing there for 10 minutes or whatever. The good thing about all this traffic backing up is maybe in that case you sort of can, because the cars are stopped, but it's not the safe thing to do. It's not a real crossing place. And here's that LaGrange example here. You can just tell from the aerial photo. Can you guys, you have screens. Can you see what I'm, okay, great, yeah. I mean, just at a glance at the photo, you look at that, it's like, oh yeah, okay. That's that transit-oriented development. That's that old-fashioned Main Street thing that looks so nice. And here it is here. And the curb to curb on this really is the same as what we've got out here. Not when it flares out to the dedicated right turn lane, but the typical, that's 60 foot. It's the same as this. And in this case, like Kelly pointed out to me, they have on-street parking on either side, which helps the whole pedestrian situation. But one of the things to think about someday, if this ever gets torn up and redone by IDOT, is that those 12-foot lanes probably don't have to be 12-foot lanes. And I'm not talking about reducing the number of lanes, because you got to get the cars through. And you can correct me, but 12-foot lanes does nothing but invite people to go really fast.
And I might be mistaken, but I think that some of those lanes are more like 14, 15, 16 feet on this particular
I think you're right, yeah. Some of them are very wide. And that's great. Like the last time I was here, I remember pulling out and a semi-truck had to be going 60 miles an hour, and he was loving it. But if that was a 10.5-foot lane, he probably wouldn't have felt so comfortable in a semi-truck to go that fast. So who are we trying to please here? The semi-truck drivers or the residents of Wheeling? You know, I think that's really where the priorities ought to be. So I'm going to now come back.
Is 10.5-foot standard or code, or is that,
So
I mean, standard for LaGrange?
10 and a half or 11, really, the minimum that IDOT is comfortable with is 11, but they will agree to 11, and 11 is a lot better than 12.
Okay.
While we're on all that subject, because what I want to do here eventually actually is just kind of dive right into these enlarged plans and talk about, I think that somebody requested that we give a little bit more at this point. So we thought we were here to really get pure feedback, at least a couple of weeks ago. But what I want to do actually is maybe offer even a recommendation at this point, and people say, no, I disagree with that, just to kind of facilitate the conversation, if that's helpful. Because I've probably been thinking about this even more than you guys, to be honest with you. For about the last 6 or 7 months, I go to sleep, I keep thinking about this. Which one's the best? What are the pros and cons? So at the very least, I can talk about what the pros and cons are and kind of elaborate on that. But if there's anything else to say about these pedestrian crossings, maybe now's the time to do it. Because I think that there was also some skepticism about our comparison with the Libertyville example. And so, and Kelly can say better than anybody about what it's like to deal with IDOT and all of that. But I would just say that the sooner that you get something into your plan that's the vision of the village of what you want, the stronger your position is going to be, you know, when the time comes to fight for that. And when they, you know, we're going to restripe this thing, whatever, not so fast. Now's the chance to sort of intervene and get this thing right. So, so I guess the first question that I just want to throw out there to get feedback is, the 2 places that we're proposing these pedestrian crossings, are there objections to that or better ideas, or are you just going to trust us that that's the right thing as long as we can, like in the final report, give more detailed information about, you know, exactly what it would take, the process?
I commented on it last time. Is the idea to actually slow down traffic here so it's more walkable? Because that's the whole, everyone in Wheeling hates the traffic here. So it seems like all these plans are to slow it down more for the safety of pedestrians because we're making it walkable. And that makes sense in hindsight, but it's just going to frustrate everyone. They're like, oh, did you do a traffic study? Because it's going to make it even worse. Like, maybe I'm not understanding what the goal is with that island over there.
I'm going to try to answer it, and then you get to correct me or say anything else. The first thing I think is to allow people to just cross the street. And I think that it's not so much a matter of making it take more time for somebody to get from point A to point B. It's just that on your way from point A to point B, your speedometer isn't as high. That's a good thing. I mean, you should drive the speed limit, whatever the speed limit is. It's probably 35, right, out there? It's 40?
I'm talking about at rush hour.
It's
like
35 out there.
4 o'clock coming home from Highland Park. I used to work out there. Coming down here,
you're just not moving at all.
It takes forever.
Yeah, that's why I don't think it would actually affect. I really don't think that what we're talking about here is causing people to take longer to get from point A to point B, because in the end of the day, the times that it's taking forever, you're not going fast anyway. So we're not slowing you down.
Okay.
It's just that while you're going really slow,
using those times to let people
you have the
cross.
opportunities for people to cross. Yeah.
So you're not speeding it up, but maybe not slowing it down. So it's just making it safe. Okay.
I don't think you're slowing down the distance, because I don't think that the volume of traffic isn't being reduced really at all. We're not taking away lanes, right?
No, we're not proposing to change the capacity of the road. So at peak times, when you're using all of that capacity, that's the speed you're going to get. It's more about times when there's excess capacity, and so they're traveling the speed limit or higher, that it's helpful to have these narrower lanes, or maybe a buffer between the traffic and the pedestrian, so that the pedestrian feels more comfortable.
Okay.
We don't believe that the road can handle taking away any capacity. We would fully agree with that.
Okay, so one thing I'm surprised I've never heard, over by Field in London, there's a bridge that goes over, right? And nobody's proposed that, so is that cost prohibitive? Is that, like, why has that never been recommended, that we go over Dundee?
Yeah.
ADA is one thing.
Okay.
That's a big.
So that current,
Yeah.
you can't do that anymore, is that?
Well, you could do it, but you have elevators that.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's similar to the elevated stations, you know, they have to have an elevator, but that specifically, those become very costly, and IDOT may accommodate them, but then they prefer not to take any of the maintenance, so then I think they defer the maintenance responsibilities to the local municipalities, so then we have the ongoing maintenance duties and responsibilities of those pedestrian bridges, which do get costly over time.
And many years ago, we almost lost that bridge.
Okay. Because
They
it's
were
not compliant
considering
anymore?
just taking it down completely.
Okay.
Instead, they replaced it.
And I think one thing to add, just maybe more generally, is that overpasses or underpasses are 100% safe for the people that use it and not helpful for people that don't. And what we find at a lot of those, particularly if they're put in retroactively, people don't use them. They're still crossing at the street, which is now less safe because the accommodations haven't been put in place. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay.
So could I ask a question about the island that we're looking here? Is there going to be any kind of, like for this type of proposal, would there be any kind of like signalization or anything, or is it just going to be a crosswalk? The reason I ask is because we have over here on 83 north of Palatine Road, we got a crossing across 83. It's a marked crosswalk, but a lot of times somebody's in the crosswalk and cars should be stopping, they're not, so they're like violating the law, and it's like, does it become an enforcement issue that, this crosswalk's here, you guys got to obey it? Do you put signalization in? I mean, or is it, how does that work?
It's a great question, because I will be frank with you, I feel like even as traffic and pedestrian consultants, we've struggled with this with IDOT for years. So I'm happy to report they've come a long way in accommodating requests for pedestrian crossings at basically unsignalized locations, unsignalized locations, so not at an existing traffic signal. They recently, this year, put out guidelines for traffic control and signage that is appropriate, that's based on the volumes on the road you're crossing, the speeds, either the posted speed limit or the 85th percentile speed limit that the cars are going, the number of lanes that you're crossing. So in this area, it would either be one of those pedestrian actuated flashing beacons where they're, in addition to a refuge island, you'd have to locate it at a location with a refuge. Or they have now given approval to start to use, once again, those hawk signals they're referred to. And they're actually traffic regulators. They're not just warning signage. And so it's a 3-head signal. It's dark when it hasn't been activated. Once it's activated by the pedestrian at a marked crosswalk location, the yellow light flashes, and then 2 red heads go on. And so it becomes a stop signal for the traffic, but it's only in use when the pedestrian actuates it. And they have, for the longest time, not allowed those in the entire state, particularly in District 1. But they have recently issued guidance on when it's appropriate to use those. So it's great news in the pedestrian safety community that they're on board with that.
Yes, I think the whole form base is interesting, especially with some of the proposals you have with some of the housing proposals where it would encourage people to go from one side of the road to the other. It's really pretty interesting. It's just because I know we've in the past we've fought. We're trying to get a crosswalk down here on Milwaukee over by the Dunkin' Donuts and Wheeling Road. And that's horrific in that area. But
Is that the location, there was a fatality? Was that there?
I'm sure it's been,
It's probably been close.
Yeah.
so something like this, at least it could say, hey, you know, we planned for this, we believe this is where it should be, and hopefully we have a better chance of getting something like this there versus, you know, saying, well, we know it's bad down here. We definitely need something down here. Here, it's like, it's laid out, here's the plan, we need this, and maybe we have a better chance of actually getting a crosswalk here.
Yeah, I think that the one at the train tracks is kind of being used unofficially this way already anyways. I'll bet you it is, because it's kind of safe to be there, you know, like, because there's not a drive lane through the middle, but this is sort of with a raised curb, making it official and even more safe. And then the one to the east here is, and it doesn't show up on this plan, but it happens to coincide with where one of our recommendations is to have that multi-use trail that follows the creek, you know. And so we think that's a really exciting idea, and it's the kind of thing that we think that is pretty feasible, pretty implementable, and that can make a big difference for the village to have this. Granted, there weren't a lot of respondents to the survey, but there was really strong support for all of that idea about the bike network, the pedestrian network, even outside of the station area, tying it all together and connecting all these assets. So that's something that we think that the village really should strongly consider. And to be able to cross there and get to the park is kind of a big deal. I think that would be quite a big deal, actually.
So where is that one on the east? Where is that one located?
It's just in front of St. Joe's,
Oh, right by St. Joe's?
tying into the far side of the Whitley property.
You know,
There's a trail there.
The new senior building
Yeah.
goes behind that, and then just right down to the right
Okay.
side of the senior building.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Is that
Okay.
what you were saying? It was like an aircraft carrier, 1,000 or something from there?
It's even worse. From here to the next one's 1,000.
But you're not considering, like, there's a crosswalk right here, right?
Yeah, from here to there, it's 1.5 aircraft carriers to that one. It's 1,500 feet.
Okay.
And from here to that one is 1,000.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And so like as the LaGrange example, you can cross there 300 to 500 feet, something like that. More typical for a, you know, for a block like that.
I have difficulty with the one right by the tracks, though. And definitely if you tried to signalize it, because that would get really nasty with traffic. I mean, people would stop, and they'd be on the tracks.
It seems like the one in Libertyville, it just has like the big fluorescent sign, a picture of a pedestrian crossing. And in that case, and the way I think of it is, I've been working on a project in St. Louis for a while now, that in St. Louis, they love those rapid flashing beacons. You can't, on a Missouri road, state road, you can't have a crosswalk without those. By rule, you have to have those, and they're $25,000 a pop. So I was like, man, you have to be so careful about where you draw a crosswalk as a planner all of a sudden. But in those cases, like people in Missouri, I'm on video, they don't drive well, they're crazy, they'll run you over. And so in this sort of thing, even on the streets where they've done these road diets and gotten it narrow, where they have those rapid flashing beacons, people don't respect them and you have to run anyways. But the ones that I saw didn't have the mid-block crossing, so it's back to that Frogger game. That's why I think these could be really effective. Even if somebody doesn't respect it and slow down or stop, you got halfway across, you know. That's kind of the way I think of it.
Where are we getting so many pedestrians crossing there right now? Are they walking through
Yeah,
the?
they're just using the median that's there now to cross halfway.
Yeah, but where are they coming from? Are they walking from the train station through the cement works?
I don't know if they're coming from the Park District or.
Because there's a crossing on this side.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I know me personally, in the morning and in the evening, I have seen people.
Yeah, I've occasionally seen people there, but I'm trying to figure out where where they're moving between.
I think some people come from Burger King in the morning and then are continuing on and crossing over and vice versa, you know, because Burger King is open in the morning.
Well, one of the things, we're building a lot more around here, so you're going to have more people crossing. I think that's the point.
The hope is to have
You're gonna
more pedestrians, but.
Yeah, you're going to have the new apartment building across from the train, so people are going to, if they want to use the train, they're going to have to come across.
And I think they were encouraging too, they had a view of Lynn, like a vision for Lynn Plaza too with that.
Yeah.
You know, with the path either, I think.
On the backside.
And the backside and like being split where you go in through the middle or something like that. So I think they were encouraging, you know, something to go there where hopefully it would increase pedestrian flow in there, yeah.
Now,
Yeah, that's
when-
exactly right. I think that today, there's probably not all that many people crossing there, and there's so many people now up here that would be crossing, and that will be crossing, especially once everything opens here, that's going to have the most pressure on it. But you're absolutely right. Part of what kind of goes hand in hand with this idea is if we could actually strengthen that connection, it kind of does help the viability of this shopping center, I think, and what they're trying to do. And I'm glad to say that the owner of this was really enthusiastic about this idea. He seemed very much on, at least back in November, he was very much on board with chopping a hole through his building and
That's
making
about
it
as
into.
vacant right now anyway, so it's vacant right now anyway, so what's it to him?
My other concern is for emergency vehicles. Yesterday or the day before, I was on Dundee, and an ambulance had to ride in that center median the entire length because traffic was backed up.
Mhm.
And that would choke him out right there at the tracks.
Right.
What's that?
Yeah, but he can drive on it now.
That's probably a good point that, I think the Libertyville one, they planted a bunch of flowers and stuff like that the thing might be to do is to make it mountable, to make it so that an emergency vehicle.
Yeah.
They wouldn't want to do all the time, especially not with the fancy fire trucks that, I know that everybody's real proud of the new fire trucks and stuff, they don't want to do that, but if it's an emergency and you can mount it.
I want him to be able to get to my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Mhm. Well, so then I wonder now if it's okay, we just kind of go through each one of these one at a time and just everybody spill your guts. So I'll just say this, at a glance, what you can see here is that all the red dots are kind of small still because they're working within existing property lines. So one of the recommendations we have besides the form-based code is if there's ever opportunities to consolidate curb cuts, that's a great thing, because as you walk down a street like this now, it's just curb cut after curb cut, and there's these potential collisions between a car and a pedestrian. It's not a very pleasant thing. Besides having the building set back and not being able to see what's in the storefront and all that kind of like the rewarding experience of being a pedestrian, you're also dodging cars, potentially like just zipping in and out in front of you. And then back here, you guys probably have already seen a site plan proposal or things like that. So you know that folks are thinking about doing a mixed-use development out here. I think that those mixed-use developments always end up being mixed use horizontally. So it's like there's some apartments behind like a commercial or something like that. We love the idea of buildings being a little taller, like 2 stories or 3 stories on this to make the street feel like that kind of outdoor room, that makes it very beautiful and satisfying. And so in that case, most commercial stuff doesn't want to be on the second floor. What can you put up there? Hopefully a level or 2 of apartments. Now, that's not everybody's cup of tea as a developer. It's harder to get financing and things like that, but it's the recommendation. It's always a recommendation for form-based code, not always, but it's very typically what we planners love to see. And then the other thing is that you'll usually see the parking, the surface parking way out front and then the building set back. And store owners love that because people come in their cars and they don't want to feel like, oh, there's no parking spot, I'll just go to the next place. But a model here that was set by the Lake Forest, a little trick that urbanists use these days and planners use is to have what we call teaser parking. Some parking there where folks think, yeah, I think I can find a parking spot. So they pull in and they take a shot 1 or 2 times around, all right, and then they realize there's more parking in back. So it's not one of these like I'm in downtown Chicago and I'm hunting for a parallel parking space on the street and it's just like I pull my hair out. There's this teaser parking. So this you'll see a lot of times as almost like a diagram of that idea. Okay? And the thing about this is what you see in some of the other ones is if you can line up 2 of these across from each other, then doesn't it suddenly kind of refocuses what you think of Dundee. All of a sudden it's like, oh, those 2 things are connected. And there's not this like the Grand Canyon in between the 2 things that maybe I really will cross there. And maybe there's even an opportunity to almost in a sense brand the kind of developments here where I'm showing a little splash of blue there and who knows, maybe there's some kind of like fountain things, stormwater features, things like that, that I think that could elevate the whole brand of what we're trying to do here. So now let's just get into the specifics here. So we already talked about this one, and in this case, it's respecting the property lines. It's just kind of a reconfiguration of what that one developer has already proposed, taking some of their residential units here and putting it on top of that and putting more parking in back and less in front. These guys still get a driveway over here. Okay. And in this case, if we can expand a little bit, you can see that there's even an opportunity, like these 2 guys consolidate their driveways into one, and they utilize this back alley now, like this, that a lot of the traffic, it'll just come in here and use the back, so less curb cuts. And then here's the big dramatic one, where maybe there's even a way to connect this to something on this side, and this is outside the boundaries of the stationary plan, so it got drawn and then erased, but there's an idea here about even connecting that to a expanded commercial development, and then even making new connections back here that could be for cars or maybe just for pedestrians, but to really make a finer network, a finer street network, which is going to make the whole place a lot more walkable, connected, pedestrian friendly, and actually alleviate traffic. Okay, now, and by the way, everybody just stop me at any point if you want to ask a question or give a recommendation or say, that one's awful, whatever you do, don't. Or maybe we should even say, you know, each one say, because what we're going to try to do here is come back the next time with a plan that kind of consolidates all the best ideas, gets rid of all the bad ideas, and that like basically synthesizes these things into a vision that can be used as guidance in the future. And so in other words, it's not that we have these plan 1, 2, and 3, pick one. It's like, if there's a good idea in one for over here, let's hold on to that. And if there's a good idea for one over here, we'll hold on to that. And then have one plan in the end that shows all the good ideas.
And these aren't, these sub areas and these scenarios are not to say that that's what has to be here at the end of the day. It's what could be if we follow the plan and the scenarios that are outlined by our consultant team. So it's not to say that in this scenario here, we like this, so therefore that's what it's going to be. We don't know what it could, you know, what it will ultimately be, but if we have the plan that says, here's the direction we want to go, then we then have the tools to then work with the developer to say, here's what we want to see, rather than if we didn't have this plan and have just kind of your run-of-the-mill, you know, suburban style development along Dundee. So again, don't concentrate too much on the look of this per se, but the major elements that are being presented here. You know, the buildings being forward, parking in the rear, a mixture of uses, ground floor retail, second floor, third floor residential. You know, those kind of concepts is what really we're looking at to see if that's the direction the board wants, or the plan commission wants to go, rather than don't concentrate too much on I don't like that building there, or I don't think that could happen. It's more, is this the type of direction the plan should go for this area?
But didn't we talk last time we met, didn't we talk, there was like 3 or 4 scenarios in, as the scenarios got, as we went deeper into the scenarios, wasn't there a statement made that there was more involvement that needed to happen by staff? So there was also a price to get to that point, right?
Well, the third scenario is where the village is more involved in terms of land acquisition, to then say, we own this land, you need to show us the development that we want to see. Have more hands-on involvement because we as the village are owning that land or assembling land, you know, to get to that final picture.
Okay.
Some of the other scenarios, you know, some of the less intense scenarios are, we're not involved with land acquisition or you know, assembling things or dissecting things, but rather, if this is the way if this is just the shape of the parcel the land is, then what can we do with it?
So we should kind of leave that to the side and concentrate more on the scenarios that are being shown to us.
Yeah, right? I think if what's preferred in the third scenario, which I think is the facilitate, or is that the participate?
Yeah, I think like Andrew pointed out, I think we called it two different names.
Yeah. So the third scenario, I think, is the participate scenario. If the Plan Commission likes the types of themes that are set there, then what you guys are saying as a commission is to say that you want the village to get more involved, to have to step in, to be more part of that process to create that end result.
Okay.
And I think that's a great point, because part of it is just being realistic about it. Is you can't have everything. You know, there's a budget here. So it's kind of like, what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to make recommendations of priorities of where because you can't have everything. So if there's 1 or 2 places where it's like, you know what, for the village, like, you really should participate, that's the thing where you should exert the blood, sweat, and tears for Steve and all that, and make that thing happen. that we want to know where those are, because we know it's not going to be everywhere, it can't be everywhere, you know.
One thing I was talking about last time, and again, it's just coming to mind, the third level participate, right? Like, that looks awesome. I think it's a great plan. I don't know, but like, even budget aside, it's like, how realistic is it in your history doing this? You know, if you're cutting through buildings and you have to talk to property owners and be like, hey, can we put a street through here for parking? Because we don't want curb cuts, you know, and it's a great plan, right? And like, then there's 15 business owners that have to be consulted, and oh, we want to put a bike trail through here. Can we cut the corner off your building? Because, you know, it'd be really,
Yeah.
all of these considerations. There's a lot of moving pieces. It looks great to me. I'm like, yeah, so great.
Well,
Let's spend someone else's money and do all this. Like, it's.
Let's skip right to that conversation, maybe go a little bit out of order here, because I think it's totally worth it and important. Because I think there's a couple ways to go to get at that. One is that if you have a master plan like this, a sub-area plan that shows what the vision of the town is, and then at some point any of these properties start to turn over and somebody's going to do a major redevelopment of it, that's your chance to enforce how it's going to be. The problem with that is it's going to kind of be one at a time, and it takes a lot of patience, and especially for like this, like the strip stuff happening along here. Gosh, like that's a lot of different property owners. The idea of this all really becoming some unified development is harder, you know? Versus here, I got to say, like a key example, and I'm pretty excited about this, to be honest with you. I'm very excited about it, because we drew something that was kind of a combination of 2 and 3, that 2 wasn't different from 3. 2 just allowed 3 to happen in a feasible, in a incremental way, which is always the greatest, because then you're hedging your bet. So in this case, this drawing is showing what can happen like tomorrow if individual property owners just decide to do something. So this is owned by somebody, this is owned, I think, by the same person, but they don't have the land in between, and they have some other stuff, maybe, but not quite. So this is what you might expect to see. But if they could just get that one in the middle, which is owned by the village, you could see something like this, which is half of something great. You know, it's halfway there. And then, so then if those now could just be consolidated, you end up with this really unified sort of thing. And the reason I was so excited is because I think that the owner of this is kind of on board with it, you know? I think he's kind of on board with it, which is amazing. It's kind of working. It's already working. And then the same, like with the Lynn Plaza, you know, that owner seems very enthusiastic about this idea. So already we have a couple of things moving in the right direction, and that might be enough to tip it, you know. And I think like one of the comments from a couple weeks ago when Andrew was presenting this was that some of these TODs that we use as examples have a lot of riders. I mean, my goodness, they have like, it's a real TOD. And this one, because there's not so much service on the weekends and stuff, maybe we're fooling ourselves into thinking that this is that kind of transit-oriented. Was it you?
That was,
yeah.
I was going to wait for an opportunity to talk about that again,
Yeah.
because I wonder if we, you know, if we're shooting ourselves in the foot trying to develop around the train service, and maybe we ought to have a different focus, because you know, and the comment we got back from staff last week was kind of like chicken or the egg, you know.
Exactly.
They said if you build it, then maybe Metro will consider, but I wonder, you know, if I was either a renter or maybe I was going to buy a condo, you know, I might not take, I live in my condo close to 16 years now, and when we bought this, the developer was telling us, oh, you're going to have all this stuff building around downtown, and, you know, train lines are going to be increasing, and 15, 18 years later, none of that's happening. So if I was coming in today, would I go down to Arlington Heights, or would I go down to Park Ridge, or someplace where it's already there and not wait for it? So I wonder, you know, can we get past that hurdle, or should we maybe not even really think about, maybe the train is an afterthought and we develop,
I think
you know, something without, not considering a train as much?
I'm going to answer this the way that I really believe is right, because we've been dealing with that question a lot lately with cities that are in places that don't have transit at all yet, and they're trying to start a TOD from scratch. And so we'll have these consultants like the best that you can, the most expensive and the best TOD kind of like national consultants to say, what you need to do, the lesson is build it to the TOD kind of form, and don't even worry about whether the transit ever comes. Because even if it doesn't, it's still going to add value and it's still the right thing to do. But at the same time, when there's opportunities for, and in some cases, when there's no transit at all, they're looking for federal grants and they're very competitive. And so they'll say, well, you already have all these other ingredients in place, you're more competitive now, you'll get that. But in any case, the advice always is to, regardless of whether the transit's going to, because the transit always takes a long time.
Well, but that's the advice, but what I'm wondering is like, have you actually gone out and surveyed the renters, the buyers, and the developers? I mean, those are the people that are going to say, where am I going to put my dollars? You know, if I'm looking for that option, or, you know, especially the developers probably, if they're going to sit there and say, well, I'm going to go on spec and build this condo development or build this townhouse development, and am I going to get buyers, you know, or am I going to be sitting on empty units for a long time because people are still going where the trains are? People are.
That's why I think, like, from our analysis that we did back in the fall, was that with the 900 units coming on, we're a little suspicious that somebody ought to keep building more and more of this stuff. At the same time, it seems to be pretty successful. Like, I know that the Northgate Crossing is like sold out like right away. I'm not exactly sure how the town center is doing, but the rents are high, like higher than all the other examples that I've shown. So, so people are moving here. I think that a lot of people move here because the train is it's a nice to have, but they love that they can also have a car and a place to park it. And because some of these TODs, the parking is, you know, like less than 1-to-1, and here, you know, you kind of have both, that balance, I think. I think our recommendation, I'm sure, unless something changes, is going to be to keep going with it, because in the end of the day, as Andrew mentioned, you know, Mundelein is leading the charge to lobby Metro to kind of increase the service and stuff. So the more that you can support that, I do think that, like, in the long term, it's going to be a TOD. So the more things that you can build that reinforce that, like I said in one of the recommendations, you just don't do things that you wish you could undo later. The building across the street is really cool, architecture and all that. I wish it didn't have like 80 feet of parking between the front door and the sidewalk. You know, like the senior building down there. Everything that happened in the last couple of years isn't quite. So I would just hope that moving forward, those things the form-based code would say how to do it. You know, but there would be something that is a more pedestrian oriented, regardless of whether the train happens or not. I would think. Because part of it too is that people want to be able to come and basically park once and then walk around. You know, so even if they're not coming by train and they're coming by car, they'll park someplace and not have to get in the car and just constantly in and out and all these sorts of things.
Sorry, go ahead.
Orderly park.
So what you just said, you're talking about Uptown 500 and the 80 feet of, so that's like the traditional sort of development versus bringing the building closer to the street to make it like Libertyville, you know, like when you just go down that alley of all those buildings. So you would put the parking behind the building or something like that. Is that what you're getting at?
I would put it behind. And there's, like, for example, I showed the Park Ridge, that's where I live. That PUD that they did that has the corner, if anybody's ever seen it, that parking is underground, super expensive. They had a TIF for it. People are still mad about it. At the same time, it won awards, and I love it. I think it's great. And not to say that parking has to go underground, because that's extremely expensive, but if you could put it behind, And they do have structured parking too, so they didn't need to do it.
Right.
They really didn't need to do it. But that's for the commercial, is what it is, because they're thinking the people the customers that are coming for that commercial space, they think they need that bit of parking there to make it super convenient. But it's all about planning the site a little bit more clever, I think.
Because town center, like Starbucks is right, there's no parking. Town center is more like what is the plan presented here, right? It's ish.
It has drive-throughs with like the drive-through.
Well, I mean curb cuts and yeah.
It's good, but it's not perfect. Yeah, it could be a little better, but it's great, you know. But the drive-throughs, like right on Dundee, are not great. But the most, like when we did our analysis of like the pedestrian experience, the best of all these things, the ironic thing was the Burger King. Because it actually was pretty close to the sidewalk. It had some dining out front and all. It was the Burger King. Who would have thought?
I told them they shouldn't get rid of that table outside, but they did. I was like, nobody's sitting here because it's ugly. If you clean it up, the people want to sit here. So, but I got rid of it. Anyway.
No, one of the things I was going to say is I think we've covered the pedestrian element, but in these scenarios, are there any particular things, I think what Tim's looking for is, are there any particular things that really jump out to you that are really exciting? And what about those excite you, or are there things that you just don't feel are worth pursuing? So that, you know, they can return at a later date and refine that down and take, again, the best elements of all of these scenarios and combine it into one, again, you know, one holistic plan that takes, as Tim mentioned, the best of everything and combine it together. So are there any things of the commission that really jump out to you that you really like? And if it's all of it, okay, that makes Tim's job a little bit harder, and that's fine. Or are there things that you just can't really get your head around, and you know, why is that? So.
And also, just to follow on that, I'm going to leave these three kind of on the screen, because maybe this is, in the end of the day, the most exciting of all and like the biggest opportunity. Because if the town center is going to expand, yeah, I guess it could expand to the north into this, like we've shown, but it also, especially to the west, where the train station is, and there's a cement factory there, basically, right? And like, I think also one of our recommendations would be to work really hard to relocate them so that can become something else. But then what does it become? And so, like in this scenario, in the first one, it's kind of like, well, we have this building and it can probably be used for some things that are pretty cool, like an indoor playground and stuff. A lot of people had support for the idea of a dog park, and this is pretty easy, like low-hanging fruit, relatively low-hanging fruit to do something like this. Also, if it turns out that that site has remediation issues and like it costs a fortune to put like residential stuff there, you know, maybe a park is the easy thing to do. Or here is a big idea, for better or worse. And I think a lot of people, so the park district has so many great amenities, but a driving range isn't one of them, as far as I can tell. So to have something like that might be pretty cool. At the same time, here's some pros and cons for you. Whereas like this one and the last one, you have the opportunity to strengthen a connection between the stuff on the north and the train station, like with some kind of park thing or boardwalk or something. Here, probably not so much. Maybe you could carve off a little bit, but these Topgolf folks are very particular about the dimensions of this thing, and it fits like it's like the O.J. Simpson glove. No more room in there. It does exactly.
That didn't fit.
Yeah, that didn't fit. Right, I'm sorry. Yeah, but this is like, it's like a miracle that it fits.
Thanks for that clarity, Steve.
I'm not a fan of the Topgolf, to be honest. I don't.
Not a fan?
No, I think it would look tacky right in this area. If you're trying to build a pedestrian-friendly downtown, you're eating up a lot of space for.
Yeah. Also, it's got really tall nets that don't show up.
It's not, if it was, to me, I think a small park, some other areas, a dog park, or the one building that's there now. I always thought that one building has a nice, it used to be the fireplace shop, has a great front patio.
I totally agree with you.
Make a great bar or something right in front.
Every time I see it, I wish it was a bar. I would go there right now after this meeting if it was a bar.
I know, it looks like it. They really cleaned it up, and then they moved out. I don't know what happened to them.
So is the, taken from Commissioner Yednick's input, Topgolf concept, is that something that seems a little too far out there? And I think Commissioner Yednick had some good points about kind of may go against the pedestrian environment. So should Tim and team go the opposite direction with that?
I mean, it's not a bad idea, but I'd have to spin it around the other way instead of having the nets on Dundee Road.
Yeah, and that's the problem. They have to face either that way or that way.
Yeah, because of the sun. Okay, well, I think you guys.
I need the course to widen out.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we have
It sounds like recreation's a good direction,
A park would
but
definitely be good.
you know, something that's going to tie in the pedestrian feel, and I think you know, maybe we look at some park amenities that aren't currently in this area and bring them here.
That's the thing for me, is like, we have a park. This is a park. Like, we already have this is a very nice, and they just built a playground, and I was like, this is great. My daughter's gonna love this. So I don't know why we'd build another park on the other side of the tracks.
How do you feel about a dog park?
I'd like to see a parking garage there. And then you could put your resident property facing west, and that would block the noise like they did at the 500 building. Put the parking garage in the way of the train to block the noise for the units. You're showing a lot of multi-unit, I don't know if they're row houses or townhouses, whatever, right on the corner there.
Yeah, I think that we were a little skittish about showing more big buildings that have the structured parking, just afraid that maybe there's already so much of that. But definitely point taken about screening with parking to that side.
But you could have retail on the Dundee side and then parking behind it.
I think also like an underutilized asset, just to keep in mind here too, is like, actually, if we could see up a little bit here, on the Lynn Plaza area, there's this big parking lot. And it will never be anything else because it's underneath the ComEd easement. It's like, wow, you can't build anything there, but you can put parking. And I know that for the luxury units, the surface parking isn't really, they want the covered parking and all of that. But just keep in mind, like there's an area there that someday could absorb a lot of parking down here too, for what those things are.
That's all ComEd.
Yeah, all this stuff here, it's like you can't put buildings, but it's still got some value for something.
I have a question. I was going to answer your question. You said, how do you feel about a dog park? And it's interesting that you're asking us 7, 8, 9 people here for our opinion versus what does an economic study say? Like, what does the area want? Like, it doesn't matter what I want. It matters what the 40,000 people of Wheeling, do they want a dog park versus a Topgolf versus a kids play center? I went to the Glen, and my daughter had an event at the tumble gym thing where you just climb all over it was amazing, and I love that. So you showed that as an option. I'm like, for me, because I have a 6-year-old, that's important to me, but I'm not representative of everybody in Wheeling, so I'm just...
Well, but I think you take the, sorry to interrupt, I think you take the concept of some sort of family-centric activity, and it's not, again, not getting down to the weeds of what specifically it is.
Sure.
But that it's filling a need that's not currently being provided.
Sure.
So we have outdoor family activities at the Park District, but maybe we don't have something indoors. I mean, we have there's the new rec center, but maybe that's, they may not have a tumbling center in there or rock climbing or whatever that may be that can fill a recreational need indoors, so that Tim and the team can put together something that's kind of a recreation zone, but that's maybe indoors, or and then that in turn the village can then use that as the marketing material to work with our economic development team to say, here's what the village has identified as a desired gap or use to fill that gap. So I think your point is very well in that, you have you mentioned a specific scenario, but I think, what we can do is we can take from that and say, okay, maybe we take that up a few higher levels and say, let's say that this may be a good activity zone, whether that's recreation, passive, active, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I mean, I personally am fine with either of those, the dog park and the tumbling zone, or a Topgolf, because I go to Wooddale because I love Topgolf, and I drive all the way out there, and I think that people would come here because Schaumburg has one too, but people would come here, and the demographic of the Wheeling one is probably going to be people who would go to Topgolf, but it might also be people who are just about to have kids and would go to a tumbling zone. Like, I would suggest, I don't know when they're going to open Wheeling one, but surveying people who are moving into Wheeling recently, like, given the options of these 3 things, which one would you, I don't know, like, how much of that goes into it versus asking us as a panel here?
So, like, we had the survey out there for a long time, and there weren't a lot of hits.
Yeah, true.
So kind of in some ways, I'm kind of depending on you guys to actually be representative of the community in a lot of ways. But I'll just say this about Topgolf, is like, because we're talking about form-based stuff, so it may be that the form of it is just not right, but as an economic development engine, wow, it brings like hundreds of jobs, so much revenue, like Schaumburg just had one, so I read the article about that, and I was blown away by the amount of jobs that it brings.
And sales tax too, I would think, too. Yeah.
It's a huge hotspot. I mean, I know my friends, every time we think of going somewhere, like, hey, let's go to Top, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to
I'd go
Wooddale.
there
Like,
too in a heartbeat.
and it's just,
So, and I would just echo or point out that the purpose of this kind of comprehensive plan, stationary plan, is for the village, and the plan commission as part of the village to set what it wants for the community. You are the representatives of the village. It has been out there for the community. we set the higher level goals of like recreation or something, or activity zone here, and then the developers, as they come in, will do the market study and do the further analysis to determine what is the best fit.
True.
So we kind of give the signal, this is what we want this area to develop as. That's the whole purpose of this plan.
For sure.
And then they drill down as to what the market says, what the demand is, how it fits into that plan.
Great.
So we're looking like bigger picture, not saying we want a Topgolf here,
Yeah.
but we want, as Steve was saying, rec or activity zone here.
Well, that's kind of what I was curious is how, when you show these pictures and development, how we get from point A to point B to point C, when you say it's form-based code, does that mean that, you pick one of your drawings and say, okay, we're going to designate that block and this is going to be the design for that block? Or are these just suggested designs? That's where I'm lost, is how we give you recommendation. I mean, you guys got some great ideas. It was, the concept is really cool, but how do you guide that process?
I think what's going to happen here, so as part of our plan, we're going to have some sexy rendering, some images, some imagery that paints a picture, okay, that can go someday with an RFP that the town could put out, and that it would hopefully attract people that would do something that's within. I'll give you an example. It's like this kind of industrial stuff down here, and there was a dog food factory or something that some people think was haunted or something. Yeah. And I guess it's torn down now. Like, Bridget is very sad because, like, her recommendation was like, that's the coolest building. It has so much character and authenticity. Save it, use it as something. So, but that kind of thing. So in one of the examples here, we showed some character images, because I think that what you can do that would be powerful is to try to get these things to not be generic and not to just look like every other kind of thing, cookie, but to have it some kind of character and some authenticity. And that there may be a lot of these buildings here that right now they don't seem like much, but if you look at what was the example? I guess it's not in this one, but maybe you remember from the full document. It was an example from Durham, North Carolina, called American Tobacco, and it's these bunch of little brick buildings and stuff, like a campus of brick buildings, and then they turned it into basically like an entertainment district now, where they did some landscaping on the inside, and they turned what was like a really like warehousey sort of thing into storefronts and bars and all of that, and I could see that kind of going with this sort of train depot. And I see that in other places too. There was an example, there it is, the Santa Fe Market Station. Embrace that train. Don't hide the train, like embrace the train. Like there's a caboose here where you get coffee from, stuff like that, And that's something that we can show in our imagery for the final thing, to paint that picture.
It's in here. Yeah, I like that better than Topgolf, to tell you. I think for one thing, it speaks to more people. Topgolf speaks to a segment of people. If you had an open area that was park-like with some trees and benches and things, you could have outdoor concerts, you could have presentations, you could have a lot of variety as opposed to just taking up a big chunk of property with a bunch of nets.
And that goes right with the whole...
I'm a golfer. I'm a golf nut. I played this morning, but I just don't,
I think that goes with the spirit of the form-based code too, is that like these red shapes could be different things. That could be offices, or it could be apartments above offices, or apartment of a bar, or whatever, but like smaller things that could be built incrementally, that are part of sort of a campus, that are around some kind of an amenity, open space amenity. I think that's probably pretty realistic, to have here.
I was going to say, when Town Center came in and someone petitioned to take one of the buildings, and another recommendation was a co-working space, and my brother used to live in Colorado Springs, and it was very much like this tobacco campus where they repurposed the train yard area, and it was super cool, and it goes hand in hand with co-working because it's loft-like. It's, the city where it's loft-like and open, and that's with the transit-oriented people, they're mostly, co-working is a thing for them.
Right.
So if we're throwing things in a hat, co-working is something I think could work as well.
I agree with that.
I'd like to say, just in general, I like the closeness of everything to the street. And I talk Park Ridge, that's really laid out nice. And, a lot of traffic does move through there, but somehow it gets through there. I mean, it's just something different. I think the closeness they actually would define it, that would almost be like the center of town. It's like, it's just totally different, but I think it's something different, and it just, seems a lot more defined, and to me, it's nicer, to me, it makes it look richer versus everything being pulled back. Everything is like coming in, and it just makes a lot of sense. A lot of examples you showed, with the closest, like how you said, you have some of the houses in the front, and you have and the parking is in the back. I mean, I look at Park Ridge, I see Trader Joe's, that's kind of in the back, but it's like, there is some parking there, but then I did see the underground parking. I mean, whoever planned that was really well done, because it seems like when you go there, it seems like there's a lot in that small area. You don't see much parking around there, but I'm sure it's there. I mean, I could see something like that over there for sure. So it's a really good idea. I think any of this stuff, I think the form base is, hopefully we'll get developers to come in and start giving us proposals, and it'll drive something, because right now, yeah, we got to get this done, I think.
Yeah. Steve, when we're talking about form-based, is that making major changes to setbacks and parking and all the things in place now?
Yes. Yeah, so it would require us to add to our zoning regulations, in that it wouldn't be conventional zoning regulations, it would be form regulations. So not really looking at setbacks anymore, not looking at a minimum or maximums. It's looking at how a particular block or a particular area is to be developed, and it can be as generic or as specific as it wants to be, and that would be the next step. This plan would be to promote a form-based code. The next step would be to actually go through that process and go through. That would be another workshop and public hearing, is to say, here's how generic or how specific we're going to be with our form base.
I'll give you a real specific example of probably one of the rules that you'd see in there is, like right now, most conventional zoning would say, let's say in a place like this, the building must be set back 25 feet, maybe 50 feet sometimes from the sidewalk. But all of a sudden with the form-based code, it would say, instead, like, in this case, say 75% of the width of your property, you have to have your building within 2 feet of the sidewalk. It's the opposite. You have to build close within they call it a build-to zone. Not the whole thing, but somewhere between like 50% and 75% of it to keep the continuity of that street wall, And then there would probably be some rules in there too about that it can't just be a bunch of blank walls. Some percentage of that has to be like transparency without tinted windows and things like that.
And this would just be for this specific area.
Right.
So you would only be adopting the form-based code for this specific area to facilitate a certain type of zoning and aesthetics and design.
And it kind of takes the building design guidelines that the village has right now, that we have right now, and taking it to that next level, and not just specifically concentrating on desired materials, but then going into saying, here's the materials, here's the establishing building location, forms and things like that. So it's kind of like taking those design guidelines and taking it to a very, very extreme level, but that is also, it does a few things. It provides confidence on both sides, the village's side and the developer side, to say that the expectations are very clear. There's no wishy-washiness about what could or couldn't be there. It's a very clear establishment in saying, as Tim mentioned, you have a percentage or what have you. I've got that. Okay, fantastic. Now let's move on to the next thing. So it makes it a lot clearer from that perspective. So, is there any other highlights you need, or do you feel like you've got the information you need to?
I think I do, but I definitely welcome if anybody wakes up in the middle of the night tonight, like shoot Steve an email and he'll send it to me or whatever,
You don't
Call
want to give us
Steve
your
right
phone number?
Actually, I will. I really will.
No, not on the record.
Share the phone number.
I have a question about the form-based code. So let's say that recommended that we do that. How long does that take for any one given area? And as it relates to like, does it take a year, and in that year, a developer might come and do another Uptown 500 where there's 80 feet of parking, and it's against, what we think should be happening? Like, how quick can it happen?
We can't let it take a year, whatever. I mean, it should be on the fast track.
Okay.
It should be on the fast track.
So then theoretically, there will be no RFPs?
Call me crazy, the number in my mind is 3 months. I think that's aggressive, but that's kind of.
Because I don't want to turn down a developer if they bring something, but if it's with the 80 feet of parking and it doesn't align with like all this sexy stuff that you're going to show us, it's like, no, we don't want that because we're going to do something later. But you guys are, so I'm just curious time-wise how that all sits together. And we don't have a developer right now presenting to us, but it could happen.
But it gives us an opportunity to at least say we hopefully will soon have an adopted plan that goes to that next level. And so if we do get a development proposal in that meantime, we can work with them to say, this is the direction we're going. So we'd like to see how close you can get to that eventuality.
Right, I do think in the meantime, this would be a useful tool. In the meantime.
Absolutely.
It really will.
Right.
You don't actually have to have the form, now that I think about it, you don't actually have, because it's to your discretion, to go through that process. It's just that it will make things smoother during the process and probably even attract, if you guys get the reputation of being like a village that's like, pretty good to work with and stuff, I think that's only going to help things. And actually, Steve and I talked about maybe another recommendation is something that you guys can just do even outside of this, is that when people come in for a PUD, you encourage them to get as much of what would have been in the secondary plan approval into the preliminary plan approval, so that when somebody comes along, I guess because Steve was telling me there's an example now, some folks want to do restaurants here. It's like, well, the PUD was already approved, but now we have to go through a couple more meetings and stuff just to get the restaurant approved, that if it's part of that preliminary PUD for some of these important parcels, that you could streamline that, and it's sort of like pre-approve restaurant, because we already know that it has the sufficient parking and the loading and all of that. Just an idea. I think that the more that the village can get the reputation as being a place that a developer can come to and have some confidence that when they pay a civil engineer like $100,000 to work out all this kind of stuff, that they're not sent back to the drawing board 2 or 3 times.
Sure. Steve, with form-based code, would the parking code be revamped?
I think that's just in general needing to be done.
Because I would be very motivated to want form-based code if we could revamp the parking code.
Yeah,
Just throwing that out
I think
there.
it's something that would come shortly thereafter, and that takes a little bit more time, just analyzing what the proper ratios are and everything regarding parking.
So if a developer came in at our next meeting and they wanted to do another Uptown 500 with the 80 feet of thing, and we said, no, we want you to be, we couldn't approve it because the setbacks are in place currently. So we couldn't tell them, move the building 2 feet from the street because that's what the future is. Like, we can't even approve that, so how do you?
Unless they ask for variances.
You can also say
Variance.
that right now, based on the current structure of the code, it would require a variance from that, but we're willing to grant that because that ultimately gets us to that point when we do have form-based code, that it would then be within that, that form, so.
And then parking will be in the back, and it's just like, I'm just trying to think of what it would look like if someone came in 2 weeks and said, hey, we want this really nice building, it looks just like Uptown 500. We're like, oh God, that looks really good, but not really our plan anymore, so it's, and that's all hypothesis, or hypothetical. But
I'm curious to know, do you think that, are you thinking that there should be a higher requirement of parking or less, or?
It varies from.
watch some of the past meetings about
You'd
how
have
I
to
feel
watch
about
our
that.
meetings. We've had a lot of parking disputes on different.
There's a lot of variances that come for parking.
But that wouldn't apply here because really you're talking about just a specific area. I think Mallory said that you're not going to touch the code all over. You're just talking about individual blocks or sections.
I'm just assuming if you move parking from the front 80 feet to behind with a cut-through alleyway, like that's got to change parking, counts and stuff. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just same number in the back instead of the front. Who knows? It's not here. So I'm just trying to think what I should be thinking next time someone presents a big thing, if there is such a thing.
I'll just share from my personal opinion, and this may sound crazy, but it's happening a lot lately, is actually having parking maximums instead of parking minimums, or and basically to put it on the market and say, you know better than we do how much parking is required. You're the one that's taking the risk to have a failing business or residential development or whatever, and because I know a lot of developers now that are radically reducing the amount of parking that they're building because they find that they just don't need it. It's not being used and it's very
I
expensive.
think that's ultimately what my challenge is with people who come for variance because there's not enough parking based on code, but in reality, they're probably not going to need it. So it's just,
I think that something to keep in back in mind is this overflow situation here. If that were a district shared parking lot.
Yeah, right. That's
to
under the
absorb
power
this,
lines. Is that spot or no? That's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
like on the day of the Super Bowl party and all these kinds of things happen, it's like that, that's where they go.
Why not? I mean, it's just grass right now, so.
It's grass, yeah.
One of the things that I asked in the last meeting, and you said you watched, was, are there, pardon? Are there suggestions that you guys can make that would help jumpstart some of this development? Like, could the village do some infrastructure things, like put in some bike paths, put in some pedestrian bridges, and then all of a sudden it becomes more attractive where some of that infrastructure is in place? Or is that jumping too far ahead?
I think that we owe it to you to clarify those in the final recommendations, absolutely, to pinpoint it and even to put costs to it. And I think that one of them will be to pursue the idea of that bike trail, that bike network, to connect the stuff on the north side of Dundee down there. But the village has already done a lot of things. I mean, I know that there's all kinds of new sidewalk. Every time I look at it, there's like a new, piece of infrastructure happening out here. Someday, if you could bury those utilities, plant some trees, that would be very beautiful, but that's a very expensive kind of long-term thing. I don't think it's going to make or break any of this either, to be honest with you.
Okay.
There's a lot of really nice streets that have utilities, and you just kind of don't even notice it. But if I did a rendering, and I probably will for this final thing, showing this like in 20 years, there probably won't be utility poles, and there'll be a bunch of trees, and it's like, wow, beautiful.
Yes, because planting trees under utility lines ends up looking like a disaster in 20 years. Trees shaped around the wires, it looks ridiculous.
If you're good with the input you've got tonight, then, we could look at returning a returning date. I don't know if there's a meeting on July 25th, I think would be the earliest you guys could probably come back and return. I don't know if that's too early for you or if you'd prefer to.
I prefer August.
Okay.
If that works for the folks here, but I know that's probably a popular month for people to go out of town and things like that, but if we could do it in August, let's.
So do we want to continue this with the Plan Commission? The meeting in August, the first meeting would be August 8th.
That too soon, or you want the second meeting?
I'd probably take a little more time.
You would take as much time as.
Well, not as much, no, because I don't want it to go past August.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really
neither
don't.
do- yeah.
So,
Because I want that
August
form-based code
22nd
thing
then?
to happen.
The 22nd?
Yeah.
Okay. And we could always put it earlier, I suppose.
But do we need to decide to now between the 8th and the 22nd? Yes.
Yeah, because it is a public hearing, so we're continuing it, so we have to specify a date. If we move it up, we just renotice, I suppose, but.
Worst case, we could put it on the 8th, and if you're not ready, we
And
can
delay
easily
it,
make
yeah.
a motion to continue to the
Continue it.
22nd.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. yeah.
August 8th. So. that would
Okay,
be
I
the-
need a motion to continue this to our meeting on August 8th.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Kayla, seconded by Commissioner Yednek.
Nope.
Oh,
Creech.
Creech.
I'm sorry, Creech.
Commissioner Creech.
Commissioner Creech. Do we need a roll call on that, or just
Yes.
roll call?
Commissioner Kalis?
Yes.
Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Commissioner Blanova?
Yes,
Commissioner Powers votes yes. Commissioner Yednek?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Okay, we'll see you in August. All right, next, approval of minutes for June 13th, 2019.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I sent some.
I'm sorry?
I sent an email with some corrections. Does that include the
Yes,
corrections?
the corrections you sent me have been
All right.
incorporated, yes.
Then aye.
I saw the ones in the findings of fact were.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to other business, I'm going to start this one because we have some housekeeping to do. Tonight is Commissioner Powers' last meeting. So I want to thank you for your years of service that you've given to the commission and the Village of Wheeling. And then we need to nominate and elect a new secretary for the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate.
Well, hold on. There's procedural things we have to
Okay.
follow first. We need a motion to open nominations, which would be voted on, motion second, voted on, and then people can make any nominations they want, and then we would do a vote in which the roll call would be called and each commissioner, well, if there's only one person nominated, we can do a voice vote. If there's more than one person nominated, we would go through, do a roll call, and each person would state who they are voting for and tally it up on a roll call.
Okay.
So first, we need a
Thank you.
motion to open nominations.
Okay, motion to open nominations.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Commissioner Powers and Commissioner Kayla seconded.
This will be a voice vote to open.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Okay, we are open for nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Kalis.
All right, any other nominations? There being no others, so then we can just do a voice vote.
It would just be a motion to nominate Commissioner Kalis as secretary.
All right, I need a motion to nominate Commissioner Kalis.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Powers, seconded by Commissioner Yednick this time.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Any opposed?
Just Mr. Kalis.
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be voting.
All right, so be it.
Is my wife
You are
gonna
now
vote?
secretary. And secretary also is chairperson pro tem in the event that I'm not here, in which case
What sort of a training
Commissioner-
program does the village provide?
Commissioner Blanova is remaining as secretary pro tem. So if that ever comes about, you guys all know who shifts what responsibilities. I think that's all I had. Any other business? Commissioner Blanova?
I have no other business, thank you.
Commissioner Kalis?
I'd like to also remind the thousands of people watching, I'm sure, that we now have 2 seats open in the Plan Commission. So if anyone wants to take part in the future of Wheeling, it's a fulfilling and fun role. So talk to staff.
Just on a point of order, does it have to be property owner, just resident, business owner? What are the qualifications if I solicit people?
Resident, right?
Resident.
Resident.
Not a business owner who's not a resident.
Not a
business
property
owner.
owner, can't be a renter?
Right, you have to, it would have to be,
If you rent property and live here, you are a
Yes.
resident.
right.
But if you,
If
the
not-
property owner doesn't
But
live
if you're a
here.
business owner who
Yes.
does not live here, then
Right.
it would
Not
not be.
qualified, okay.
And the 125th parade was lovely, as far as I could see from the car. So I think it was well received and interesting that the parade was on Dundee. I think that was nice, although, a little bit of a bottleneck more than, side roads, but it was nice that it got pulled off.
think
And the weather
we're-
held off.
I think we're moving faster than 6 o'clock traffic.
That's true, we were, for sure. And I appreciate the village for putting on that, and it's cool that we've been here for 125 years and excited for the future of where we're headed with all these plans. So proud to be a Wheeling resident. That's all.
Commissioner Creech, any other business?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Commissioner Yednick?
I just want to thank Commissioner Powers for his service and appreciate his help getting me on board. He'll be missed.
Seconded.
Commissioner Powers, your big
Thank you.
goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Kalis, you'll make a great secretary. Just wanted to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to serve on the commission for a little bit over 6 years. I really Appreciate it. I did learn a lot, and I will continue to watch and/or attend when I can. I also like to thank staff. They've been awesome to me, answering all my questions and doing a great job. And special thank you to Chairman Johnson. We go back quite a way, and I think when the position came available, even before it came available, Chairman Johnson and I always used to talk about, I used to always express a desire to come on a plan commission, and when a spot became available, he did tell me about it, and I applied right away. So thank you, Don. It was really appreciated, and continued good luck to the commission, and I know you guys will do a great job. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, anyone?
Staff has a couple of updates for the Plan Commission.
Yes.
The Wolf Road Industrial Speculative Building that was in front of the Plan Commission back in February.
Yes.
That was approved by the board, but there was a condition on the landscape plan from the Plan Commission that to increase the height of the landscape and along the south property line between the property and Deborah Lane. The developer proposed a 6-foot tall fence, and they were proposing, I believe, 8-foot tall trees. And so I'm reporting that we've worked with the developer to increase the height of evergreen trees from their original approved height of 8 feet to 10 feet, and all other trees, shade ornamental, from 12 to 14 feet to 14 to 16 feet.
Oh.
Wow, great.
Wasn't there also a berm there?
Yes, they're still working on the engineering on that to berm that.
So
and the
it'll
fence.
appear even
Right.
higher.
Right.
Okay.
So, and the condition was to report back to the Plan Commission on that, so we are reporting that. The other thing is that we have now hired, and they've accepted the village planner position, replacement for the previous planner, the outgoing planner, Brooke. So Marcy Nyes is going to be on board with us beginning July 8th. Will be her first day with the village, and she will attend in person on the July 11th Plan Commission, so she'll be able to meet you all and get to watch the Plan Commission. But wanted to update the commission on that. She brings with her over 20 years of public and private planning experience. She's currently with a private firm up in Lincolnshire that provides private planning consulting services. So she's very excited to join the village. We're very excited to have her, and we look forward to having her serve on the Plan Commission as the staff liaison once she's comfortable and up to speed.
So she's going to be in this seat?
Yeah, Marcy will be in my seat, and you guys will be in good hands.
Very good. Is there any word on future plan commissioners?
I personally have not heard anything. I do know that we have received an application a couple of weeks ago that has been forwarded to the village manager's office, and I believe that they're working on filling some vacancies, not only with the Plan Commission, but some of our other boards and commissions as well. So I suspect that they're working on that with the village president, Horker, and hopefully we'll get some final decisions made soon.
Okay, thank you.
So with that in mind, when we have 5, what's the quorum is 4? We can't go below 4?
Correct.
Okay.
So be very aware of any
So
days
2 of
you're
us
not gonna
can't
be
take
here.
off and still have a meeting, okay.
We'll have to be very careful.
Okay.
Anything else, anyone? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Kalis, seconded by the soon departing Commissioner Powers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned.